Fire engineering podcasts are sponsored by MSA. Firefighters want to be connected to each other, to dispatch, and to their commanders. MSA has created Lunar, a wireless, handheld device that includes thermal imaging, firefighter ranging, motion alarm, and cloud technology with GPS. It's part of the new connected firefighter platform from MSA. Learn more at msafire.com.
Hello everybody and welcome to Fire Engineering Talk Radio and another installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. Tom Merrill here, glad to have you along and I hope things are going well in your hometown fire department. You know, just like you, my life has been so busy lately, juggling work, family responsibilities, duties at the firehouse. I've been on the road doing some presentations, and I couldn't switch to do this show on another evening, and I didn't not want to do a show as I really like to deliver to you a good quality show on a regular basis, so I decided to pre-record tonight's episode for you. Fortunately, I have quite a list of topics for shows, a lot of them scheduled with some great guests. They've agreed to be on some future shows, and we're going to talk about some really cool things that affect our volunteer fire service. And some of the shows are going to discuss some tactics and some strategies, and we're going to pass on some great firefighting tips and information, and I'm really excited about some of the guests I've got lined up for later this year and already into next year as well. Now, some of the shows like this evening, I'm going to be pre-recording it and passing on some of what I like to call my random thoughts on issues involving our great fire service. My observations, maybe my opinions, some pertinent information that I think is important to discuss with you, to share with you, and also to get some feedback from you as well. And I invite you to please reach out to me, share your thoughts on anything I've been talking about, things that are going on in your area, questions you may have. Usually when I do shows on what I call my random thoughts, I do get some great feedback, and I encourage that, and it's so easy to get a hold of me, so please reach out. My direct email is tamerrill63 at AOL.com, and Merrill is spelled Merrill, so tamerrill63 at AOL.com. If I can do anything for you, if you have any input on what we've been talking about, even ideas for future shows, please pass it on. Of course, I have my Professional Volunteer Fire Department Facebook page. Many people contact me on that. Please give it a like if you haven't already. I'm over 9,000 likes. I really want to get to 10,000, so pass it on to your friends and your fellow firefighters and anyone else that can give it a like, because I really like to connect with you and get information out to you. And Facebook, as you know, is a good way to get the right information out. There's a lot of bad stuff out there, but I don't troll. I pass on good, solid information, and I look forward to connecting with you either via email, Facebook. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, so please give me a shout out. Let's connect and let's talk about everything going on in our fire service. So thanks for listening in. I really appreciate it. Thanks also to Fire Engineering and Chief Bobby Halton for supporting these podcasts. And thanks to our show sponsor, MSA. Without any of these people, without MSA, none of this would be possible, and we would not be able to bring you these podcasts. So thank you very much to all of them. I'm sure you recognize Chief Halton there on the MSA advertisement. So thanks to MSA, thanks to Chief Halton, thanks to Fire Engineering, and thanks to you for listening in. Hey, not too early to think about FDIC in Indianapolis. It's going to be next year, April 20th to the 25th. Time now to reserve your room, start picking your classes. It's all underway now. I'll be presenting my class again this year, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, on Tuesday, April 21st from 8 a.m. till noon. I'd be honored if you chose to attend my class if you are going. You know, every year I revise it and pass on some new information and get some new stuff passed on to me from people that are out there connecting with me. And I like to revisit it and revise it. And this year will be tweaked and revised yet again. So I'd be really honored if you could attend my class Tuesday, April 21st. And I'm working hard to prepare and deliver another great class, and I hope you can join me there. And even not, you know how many great classes there are there. If you couldn't make it, I certainly understand. There's so much to pick from. And again, for the 6th year in a row, Honeywell and DuPont are sponsoring an FDI scholarship program. So some lucky first responders can attend FDIC free of charge. People, this is an awesome opportunity to get the FDIC if maybe your department budget doesn't support being able to send firefighters to a conference like that. This is everything. These scholarships provide airfare and lodging, admission for all the training, including hands-on and the seminars and workshops, the trade show exhibits, absolutely everything. And you can get all the information and nominate somebody you think is deserving of such a great honor at FDIscholarships.com. Highly encourage you to consider going to FDIC. And again, if your department budget maybe doesn't support being able to send you, check out FDICscholarships.com. Or if you know someone that would be deserving, go on FDICscholarships.com and nominate a lucky first responder. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be in April, which is pretty far away, but it'll be here before you know it. And it is fall here, and in my area, nights are getting chilly again. You know, I'm in the Buffalo, New York area, and it is getting a little chilly. I can't believe we're entering the fall season. Heck, just the last couple of weeks have found me down south. I've been in New Orleans, I believe is how you pronounce it. I was in Florida. I was in North Carolina. And enjoying some beautiful weather and all those sights. It's easy to see why you people living down there absolutely love it, because it was gorgeous, it was warm, and I got back home just, I think, as the tropical storms were coming in through the area, so I missed all the rain and really enjoyed myself down there. But heck, you know what? Being back here in Buffalo, I don't mind the change of seasons. I just ordered my firewood, as a matter of fact, so I'm stocked up with firewood for the coming winter. So seasons are changing. And as we talked about on my last show, Fire Prevention Week just ended. And I hope you took the opportunity to get out and maybe go to your local schools and some of the other venues in town and do some nice community events to spread the fire safety message. You know, this year's theme, Not Every Hero Wears a Cape. Plan and practice your escape. You know, you've heard me talk before about the importance of getting involved in the community, and you can display your professionalism every time you're out interacting with the community, like when you're selling the fire safety message. You know, you can display your competence as you show off your rigs, and it's so important to do that. But, you know, I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that every day people do die in fires. We often think, oh, it's not going to happen in my town, not going to happen on my watch. But the fact is, every year, about 3,000 people die in fires across the United States. 3,000. Chief John Salka, many of you know and have heard him talk in the past or listening to his great podcast. He makes a great point when he says 3,000 people died in the terrorist attacks on 9/11. Look at the changes that brought about. Not downplaying it in any manner, but the point is, when 3,000 people died all at once in a very publicized and very horrible manner, incredible changes resulted, and our society changed in an instant. But 3,000 people dying in ones and twos or maybe threes, people don't notice it as much. They're a bit less concerned about it. And that is where we need to step in as professional firefighters and make them aware. Because it can happen in your hometown as easily as in any of the hometowns across the country from where you are. We're often lulled into a sense of complacency. We read about it, but we never really think it will happen in our neck of the woods or to us. I was shocked to hear that in my own state, in New York State, we really seem to be lagging behind in delivering the fire safety message or getting our residents at least to understand and embrace it, because New York leads the nation in home fire deaths this year. 87 civilian deaths year to date in New York State. Here's a crazy stat for you, but something that we should publicize and emphasize. 3 out of the 5 civilian fire deaths occur in homes without a working smoke detector. So we might be out there trying to sell the safety message, but I think sometimes we're lulled into this sense of complacency that, we'll say this, but it really doesn't happen. Folks, it does happen. It does happen. And 3 out of 5 civilian deaths are occurring in homes without a working smoke detector. So I think we can really reinforce that and emphasize that. 3,000 people. Now that's an average. One year it might be 2,500, next year might be closer to 3,300 or 3,400. But the point is, approximately 3,000 people die every year, year in and year out. And it's been that way for decades. So it's so important to take it seriously and to talk about fire safety, to teach fire prevention. And as professionals, we should acknowledge that and do everything in our power to help our communities be a little safer, while at the same time connecting with the people in the community. It shows you care, it highlights your competence, you're displaying dedication, you're showing concern. And you know what else? When we do these things, we could quite possibly pick up some new members as well. Because when you're doing it, act and look professional. Talk professionally. That's the best recruitment billboard there is out there. Treating people respectfully, knowing what you're talking about, looking and acting like a professional. People in your town might look to you and say, hey, I want to be part of that. Nobody wants to be part of the buffoon fire department. But if you have professionals in front of the group, people might want to join and be part of that. That's the best billboard there is. If nothing else, even if they don't join, at least they can respect you. 3,000, keep that in mind, because it does happen. That's why we sell this fire safety message. Another random thought I wanted to talk to you about concerns something I'm hearing more and more about, a trend that is seeing more fire departments billing insurance providers for care rendered at motor vehicle accidents. Now, we've always been doing that for expenses incurred at like hazmat incidents and maybe some other unique incidents as well. But the trend seems to be encompassing more types of incidents. And with what I am reading about, some fire departments do a flat fee while others may escalate it based on the severity of the accident and maybe the services they've provided. I just read about one again where a department implemented a sliding scale though. $150 for what's considered a minor accident, up to $650 for extrication, and $1,000 if hazmat's involved. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that. I don't know. I'm thinking about a couple different things on it, but I guess in the reality of today, with municipalities' budgets being strained and certainly many volunteer fire departments being short on funds and having to do chicken barbecues and run bingo just to get the equipment they need, it's certainly another way to help out and help fill the coffers. I certainly understand that. I do hope the money in the municipalities is properly earmarked and getting to the right people. Hopefully it's not going into some just big general account. Hopefully it's going into a department account dedicated for the fire department. I was wondering if it would affect the feelings people have of their volunteer fire department if they get a bill, but then I was thinking, well, it's probably not even aware of it because the insurance company is paying it. Hopefully the insurance company doesn't cover the whole bill. Hopefully the individual then isn't billed for the remaining bit. I don't think any of the costs would be passed on to the individual. I hope not. And then again, everybody is going to somehow pay for it, right? Because premiums will probably go up. So there's a dichotomy there. It's good for helping the fire departments out, but it can hurt the individual with increased premium payments. But like I said, it's probably the reality in today's world. And I just wondered what your thought was on that. Just something I've been reading about a little bit more and more. Whether it's a flat fee, a sliding scale, it's just the point is, we're not just billing for the hazmat incidents or some of the unique incidents. It's now trending toward motor vehicle accidents as well. Interesting. Hey, the U.S. Fire Administration came out with their official report concerning firefighter fatalities in 2018. And I know listeners to this show have heard me talk about these reports before because there's so much to learn from these shows, so much to glean from the reports and pass on to the members in our department. And we also honor the memory of those who unfortunately paid with the ultimate sacrifice. So we should read them. We should discuss these reports in our fire departments. Maybe plan a drill on the reports. Pick out some of the incidents, not to criticize or make fun of, but to learn. Discuss amongst yourselves. Make yourself a better firefighter and your department a better department. So check out the report. A couple highlights from it. The The U.S. Fire Administration is reporting 82 firefighters died on duty in 2018. That's 5 less than in 2017, so that's a good thing. Now, what I want to point out, too, is the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, they have 64 official line-of-duty deaths last year because the National Fire Protection Association doesn't take into account members who died who are considered part of the Hometown Heroes group. The Hometown Heroes Act was passed back in the early 2000s, and it was passed by Congress, and it basically considers a line-of-duty death if it occurred up to 24 hours post-incident or post-training. So they take into account firefighters who passed away up to 24 hours after responding to a call, participating in training. And the NFPA didn't put that in their report, so they're at 64, but the U.S. Fire Administration did put it in their report. They're at 82, I'm sorry. They're at 82. But pretty interesting when you do read these reports. The good news is back in the 70s, they got a nice chart there on the U.S. Fire Administration has a really nice chart showing the 70s and through the 80s, always in the mid 100 range, 150s, 120s, 130s, 140s. And the trend has really been going down great lately, which is great. So we are making incredible strides there. I did want to point out, too, that in the fatalities, 33 last year were career firefighters, 44 were volunteer firefighters, and then there were some part-time or full-time members of some of the wildland services out there. But 33 career, 44 volunteer firefighter fatalities last year. The number one cause, you probably know it. You've heard me talk about it on the show before. It continues to be stress or overexertion. That includes cardiac and cerebral vascular incidents. 37, as a matter of fact, died of stress or overexertion, including 33 firefighters who had heart attacks. So no surprise there. And the thing they point out also, it doesn't necessarily mean these firefighters are in poor physical condition either. Sometimes we automatically think they're obese or out of shape. That's not always the case. But it does demonstrate the importance of a good fire department physical exam, and of course highlights the need to try and keep ourselves as in best shape as possible. Wildland firefighters, 10 died last year, and this has been a large group every year since 1990. From 1990 till last year, there's 495 firefighters were killed. 495 during activities involving brush, grass, or wildland firefighting. That's an average of about 17 a year. Last year, 10. 10 were killed during wildland firefighting. So, sometimes think about that, but that is a dangerous job. We don't do that. I'm in a suburban community, so I don't know anything about wildland. Kudos to you people. That's an incredible service. Or anyone in the rural areas that deals with wildland, my hat's off to you. 9 firefighters died in training incidents. Something, again, we don't always think about that, training, I don't think we always think that it can be dangerous. It can be. We have to really pay attention to what we're doing. Some of the deaths there were heart attacks again, but still training, you think you're going to your local department's training drill some night, and you expect to come home from that, so that's a little sobering statistic there. 15 firefighters were killed in emergency duties not even related to fire. Some responding to calls, some participating in hazmat incidents, or some were boating incidents, but 15 not even emergency related. So, interesting. And 12 in vehicle crashes, another very high category. Matter of fact, vehicle crashes are the second leading cause of fatal firefighter injuries. 6 of the 12 involved privately owned vehicles. Another reason why we need to remind our members, regular training drills to reinforce that we drive with due regard. We talk about it a lot with fire apparatus, but even your own personal vehicle. Remind our members, buckle up. Yes, you might be going to an exciting call. It might be the big one, but you still have to get there alive. Buckle up, drive prudently, even in your own personal vehicle, because 12 firefighters were killed last year in driving incidents. 11 of those 12, by the way, were volunteer. 11 of the 12 were volunteer firefighters, and 6 of the 12 were personal, privately owned vehicles. So we need to keep that in mind. Great information. Share it with your members. There's a lot more to read about. National Fire Administration site or NFPA if you want to look at their report with the 82 deaths with the U.S. Fire Administration, 64 with the NFPA. Google those reports because there's so much to glean, so much to pass on. Again, you could pass a train drill. If you're an officer, go on the sites, get the information. There's a lot of times pictures and video and great reports. Put a drill together. You want to gain credibility as an officer? Put it together now and tell your training officer or chief you want to do it next year. Give yourself some time. Put 6 months into it. Take some time, put a good 2-hour drill together on it. You'll gain credibility, and you're also helping your department out as well. So much to learn. USFA.FEMA.gov for the one report from the U.S. Fire Administration. Another random thought I wanted to chat with you about a little bit, get your feedback on, and it might not be one of the most exciting topics, but nonetheless, it is so important. And it's an important subject to concentrate on as professional firefighters. It's something we can do to make sure we're just a little better prepared at the emergency scene. Something I've been thinking about quite a bit, something I put some articles together on, and that's the importance of pre-planning. Knowing your district. Maybe having a better grasp of target hazards and building layouts and unique and dangerous construction features. We really should strive to ensure that we have some type of program that's put together, organized, to ensure important building information is recorded, but also not just recorded, passed on to responding firefighters, because it can really help during the course of a fire incident. It can really help prevent injuries and deaths. And actually, it really doesn't even have to be at the big fire. It can help out at any type of emergency that you're at that building. Now, it's not always easy. Matter of fact, it might be easier to put these together in a paid organization. The larger ones probably have a division devoted to it. At the very least, they have personnel devoted to pre-fire planning. But in our volunteer departments, there's so much other stuff occupying our time, right? Namely, going to calls in between working at our job that puts food on the table, going to calls, training, maybe participating in community details like Fire Prevention Week last week. So it's not easy to fit in, but a professional organization, to me, somehow is set up to ensure that new building construction and building renovations are noted and discussed and maybe made part of training drills and somehow passed on to the current firefighters and preserved and passed on to future generations of firefighters as well. It's important to take these steps necessary, in my opinion anyway, to have a good pre-fire plan in place and to know that building. We should all know that building. That building should never catch us off guard when there's an incident. Now, I emphasize that building because we all have one in our district or more, but no building should really catch us off guard. And before we even talk about having a pre-fire plan for the building, we should probably have a pre-plan for the initial actions that our firefighters should take when responding to and arriving at the fire scene. There are so many things that they should be able to take away and do without having to be told. We should empower our firefighters. We should, as professionals, empower and trust them to be able to respond in a certain manner and to take initial actions on when they arrive on scene. We shouldn't really have to take up airtime to tell them where to park, what line to pull, where their water source is coming from. And we do that by putting together a well-rehearsed, well-thought-out playbook. The playbook contains the actions that we expect our members to undertake as they respond and arrive at the scene to help things get started off in a calm, professional manner. The members should all get to know the book from front to cover, from the front to the back. They should know and understand it, maybe be able to even recite it from memory. How? By training, right? By training and reviewing and training and reviewing and training on your expected actions. You don't have to ask where to park. I don't have to tell you where to park. I don't have to tell you what line to pull. or what initial actions to undertake. I shouldn't have to tell you what special tools we might need if it's an extrication call. Every department should have a playbook to go by and train to that standard. It helps everything get off to a good start. Think of a professional sports team, right? Yesterday was football Sunday. Well, I'm recording this, but yesterday was football Sunday. Everyone has a playbook, right? They look at what's confronting them, and they have a series of plays to deal with it. Plays that are known and practiced and trained on, right? Time and time again. What do they do all week? They practice, they train. What should we be doing? We should be drilling, we should be training. Now, of course, yes, for compelling reasons, we can alter our playbook. You can get on the radio to give specific orders, to change up the playbook. That's called an audible, right? Football teams do that. But how do you call an audible when there isn't even a plan to go by? Now, that's all topics maybe for another day. I've discussed it a little bit in the past, this playbook we should have. But just understand, a playbook is so important to calm the chaos at an incident scene and to get members operating a bit more cohesively, a bit more fluidly, a bit more professionally. So in addition to knowing what we can be expected to do when we arrive on scene, it really helps to know the building we are going into. The late Francis Brannigan, a name if you don't know, please Google. The late Francis Brannigan said it best. The building is your enemy. Know your enemy. But what can we do to get to know that building? What should we be doing to help pre-plan the buildings in our fire districts? Well, I want to share some random thoughts that I have on this. As again, it's important as professional firefighters that we do this. Just like the playbook can help your operations go a little bit smoother, adequately pre-planning buildings can also have a significant impact on the outcome of an incident, a positive impact, an impact that brings everybody home safely. So let me share some of my thoughts, and please feel free to reach out to me and share your thoughts, your experiences. TAMerrill63 at AOL.com, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department Facebook page. Reach out to me, connect with me. Pre-fire planning. Let's take some personal responsibility as professional firefighters in your hometown department. Pay attention to what's going on as you're out in your community. As you shop, for example. As you go to school or take your kids to school. Maybe it's go to school night and you're walking through the school. What's going on in the school? Get to know the layout. As you drive through town, as you're getting gas, as you're going out to dinner, be observant in the building you're in and as you're driving around. What's being built? What's being added on to or renovated? Look for the things you can see outright. You might only have a short window of opportunity before whatever you're looking at gets covered up by the wall or the roof. Hey, a good idea? Pre-plan officers or interested firefighters, snap some pictures of the renovation or building construction that's going on, or the new building that's going up. Preserve it for future generations of firefighters, because once that wall goes up, once that roof goes over the top, it's covered up for years, if not forever. So get some photos, preserve it for the future generation, and pay attention to what's going on around you. Now, if you're a firefighter and you notice some of the new buildings or renovations, pass it on to the officers. If you're an officer and somebody brings you the information, even if you don't know what to do with it, at least ask, go up the chain, and take the steps necessary to start recording the information. And if you're an officer, especially a chief officer, and you don't know about any pre-planned program in place, or you know you have one but it's sorely lacking, maybe it hasn't been updated in a long while, put one in place, get something going. It's important to do that. Now, it's going to take a little work, it's going to take some time, and one thing we do talk about in officer development, an officer who wants to garner respect and have a good reputation understands that some things take time and take commitment, and they put in the effort to consistently do the job. And they do it consistently because you can't always just do these things once. So whether it's the first time or the 20th time, you're doing a thorough, consistent, adequate job. So put a pre-planned program together. Come up with a nice, streamlined, effective method of compiling the information. It doesn't have to be an encyclopedia, but a fact sheet and maybe a layout of the building showing nearby hydrants can certainly help when that incident comes in. And as I said, the programs don't always help at just the big fire. It might be a simple alarm call, but it's the middle of the night, you're groggy, you're tired, you can't remember, you don't know where the alarm panel is that you need to get to. Maybe you don't remember where the Knox box is located if they have a Knox box on the building. And these can certainly help. So start somewhere. Start by understanding, yes, this is important. Yes, we need to do something. Yes, we got to kick our program in the butt and get it going on. Be a self-starter. Be the initiator. Now, one place to start if you don't have anything, or if your program needs a little revision, decide on the form you want to use to start compiling the information. There's certainly enough templates out there. Maybe your town or municipality already has adopted one. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. And there's even some nice computer programs which are out there. So pick something that works for you. Now, be careful with computers. I know everything is transitioning to computers from binders, and that's fine. Just be careful. Let me tell you one thing that happened to me once. I was out doing a presentation at a fire department, and like I like to do beforehand or afterhand, I can't remember, but I was at the firehouse, and we were walking through the beautiful truck bay, looking at the apparatus, looking at the equipment. We opened up one of the rigs, and they had a beautiful, each rig had a tablet, very nicely mounted, state-of-the-art tablet, beautiful. And they were showing me their pre-planned program and how when the call comes in, it opens up, the computer turns on, and they just get into the pre-planned program to help them out. And as I'm talking to the chief, I said, "Oh, bring up a pre-plan for me." And he turned on the tablet, and then he looked to one of the neighboring firefighters or fire officers and asked what the password was. Not criticizing him at all. It was pretty funny. We laughed, but it was a learning point, right? Password-protected computers can be a problem. So we got a kick out of that. So whatever you're going to use, just ensure the forms have a uniform layout, so you can know where to look right away for whatever information you're looking for. Think of a dark, rainy night, right, where you're out there trying to go through your binder and you're trying to figure out where the panel is. If every form is different, you're looking all over the sheet, it's dark, it's rainy. Even on a tablet, it can be hard to find what you're looking for if every pre-plan's a little different. Uniformity can really help us get accustomed to where to look. And, think about it. You need to know where the panel is. You just know, boom, it's at the bottom of the sheet. I know where panel location is. Try for uniformity in the whole town. Why have 3 or 4 different templates or printouts for the town? Uniformity just makes everything a little easier for anyone reading the plan, right? You get so comfortable. You can acclimate yourself better. You can train to it. So pick something that works for you. Ensure it's a nice, concise, and uniform information form. And then schedule time to get out into the buildings. In addition to observing what's going on, try to definitely spend some time getting into the buildings. Now, it's hard. Time is a volunteer's most precious commodity, right? So think of some creative ways as to how to do this. Maybe break into groups, have some teams, make it part of a training night a couple times a year. Possibly just pick a couple of days during the course of the year to get out into some of the new buildings or renovated buildings. Don't try and do everything all at once. Start somewhere. Work it into your officer assignments. If you have groups of officers, maybe 1 or 2 of them can be your pre-plan officers, and hold them accountable. And then go to the new buildings. Get into the existing buildings. Even if you already have a plan for a building, it's good to get out sometimes and to check things over. It's a great idea to take newer members with you as well, because you can then explain to them what your strategy notes are for that building. What are some of the hazards? You can point it out as you're walking through the building. Even if one of the newer members knows the building, they can still gain so much information. For example, maybe you got a younger member who recently graduated from high school, and now you're walking through the high school to update your pre-plan, or even get it for the information for the first time. Well, chances are that young firefighter wasn't looking at the layout of the building as maybe he would now as a firefighter, especially if he has a mentor with him telling him some of the things he should be looking for as a firefighter. So now you can walk him or her through it, and look at it from a firefighter's perspective. Now, it's important that somebody's doing that with them, and we'll get to that in a second. We just don't want walking through the building without knowing what to look for. We'll get to that in a second. But what are some of the important things to consider when gathering information and when filling out the form? Well, the one thing I like to say is keep it neat. No chicken scratch. Now, we definitely at some point are going to type it up back at the firehouse, right? Some might do it right away. Some take an iPad or a tablet with them and type the information as they're going through the building. But more than likely, people are somehow writing it down. Here's the problem I've seen firsthand. Need to ensure that somebody is doing something with the information, and an information form is not just simply thrown onto a shelf or on a desk and just lays there. Somebody's got to take ownership for it. Somebody has to ensure that the information that was compiled is now compiled into your pre-planned sheet. Now, as many times I've seen officers running around filling out these sheets, and a year goes by or more, and nothing's transferred to the pre-planned program. Nothing's shared with the membership. So getting out into buildings is one thing. Compiling the information in the building is another, and transferring that information to your computer or pre-planned binder is yet another. And then sharing it with your members is a whole nother part of the program. So compile the information neatly, because at some point it's most likely going to be typed up. Hopefully you can type it up sooner than later, so these plans, these information sheets aren't just laying around and then forgotten about. And then hopefully that information is communicated to the membership. And you can also share that information with the dispatch center. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Another way to make sure we're getting the information, in addition to looking and being observant and getting into the buildings, work with your local building department to get the pertinent information. If your municipality has a building department or an inspection department, a planning department, DPW, whoever it is that is reviewing and probably approving building construction plans, try to work with them. Get involved with them. Now, the beauty is, most likely, they're paid. A lot of times those are paid jobs. Somebody's doing that as their career. And if we develop a nice working relationship with them, they might be able to do a majority of the pre-planned work while they're on the job, and then get it to you, copy you, saving you a lot of effort. You still want to get out in the building and observe things firsthand, but if a lot of the little squares are filled in on that information form, where the panel is, what the roof construction is, things like that, saves you a lot of work. Now, that's going to take some ownership by somebody or a group maybe, to make sure that this information is passed on and it is entered. So it takes a little bit of work, but it's so important to do it. And work with their local dispatch center. You know, sometimes information is provided to them by the contractor, maybe by the building department or DPW too. Again, my paid job is at our local dispatch center at the fire alarm office, and we get calls all the time from our inspectors telling us some of the important building construction information. So we'll put it in our computer. And what's really important is, really nice, is if you can get all three entities to work together, the building department or planning department, whoever it is in your municipality, the fire department, and the dispatch center. This is where uniformity comes in really nice, a standard form for the information that we want to share between the three agencies. Now, they probably all have some specific information that's important just to them, but the standardized pre-planned form can have the same layout to share the information. It's shared among the three groups, and then each group can take out what they want for their particular operation. You might even involve the police agencies. I know sometimes that's been done as well. However, it's just great to share that information among all the different interest groups. You know, the dispatch center CAD, that oftentimes has so much information in their programs to have room for just a ton of information. And the dispatch center is actually a very good safety valve to help pass on important building construction features and other important life safety information that maybe the fire department didn't have time to look in their pre-planned program, or you have some firefighters responding that aren't familiar with the building. If the dispatch center has the information, they can pass it on and save a lot of work. At the very least, the dispatch center should have some very good information on building construction, such as truss roofs. I'm a firm believer that all truss roofs should somehow be marked at the dispatch center. And I know, chief, captain, senior member, you might know that ABC building has a truss roof, but if you're not there, you haven't responded, you're out of town, whatever the case may be, at least now those who are going can be informed by the dispatch center that, hey, there's a truss roof there, be careful. Other important notes that the dispatch center should definitely have would be heavy roof loads or, any of the dangerous roof types. The building layout, maybe there's some nuances with the building layout, such as the basement maybe only has one access. Maybe the basement goes under more than one store, and there's a smoke condition in the ABC store on Main Street, but the only access for the basement that goes under that store is at the DQW store, which is over on Smith Street. And if the dispatch center has that information, it can save the incident commander a lot of time, and they can pass that on to the responders when they're on the way. In my dispatch center, what we're doing now, which I think is kind of cool, is we're noting backup generators. When a building has or a house has a backup generator. In our town, they need to the property owner needs to get a building permit. So we will get notified by the department that does the permits that, hey, there's a backup generator going in at this house or this business. Why is that important? Well, if the incident commander has an incident and for some reason is turning the power off, maybe they want to overhaul now because there was a fire and they turn the power off at the main and they think, oh, we're good to overhaul. They don't know that, somewhere else there's a backup generator that kicked on. They can't hear it. There's a lot going on. They don't think about it. And that backup generator is still powering the building. Those firefighters could be in for a surprise. And, we laugh about it. It could be very tragic. So we note that at the dispatch center. Hey, there's a backup generator. We're also starting to note solar panels because, again, in our town they have to get a permit for solar panel. And we're noting that in our CAD as well because of the roof load. So these are some of the neat things that the dispatch center can do. And we can share information with as well. So all three entities benefit. By working together and sharing the information, we can ensure that the important information that we need is there. And if the local volunteer department is low on manpower, maybe they don't have the personnel to assign to the building pre-plans. Simply don't have the people to do the work, right? Or things get misplaced over the years and the information isn't passed on. The department hits a rough spot. That happens from time to time, doesn't it? Certainly does. If there's a good working relationship between the building department, the planning department, whoever it is who draws up and reviews the plans and approves the plans and renovations, that information is provided to the dispatch center who will then be able to pass it on to the fire department, who might otherwise not have known about it because their program is lacking and they didn't have people to assign to doing the building pre-plans. So it's in the dispatch center CAD. When the address is entered, the hazards or other important information pops up and the dispatcher can share it if needed. Now, if the fire department has a great program running, what's wrong? Nothing. Everybody wins, right? Everybody wins. And even if the fire department does have a great pre-planned program and everything's updated and running like a well-oiled machine, there's always the chance, especially on the volunteer side of things, that the responding firefighters don't know how to access the pre-plans or don't even think about it. Did you drill on your tablet that you have on your rig on how to get into it and bring it up quickly? Do all your new members know about how to get into the binders that are on the rigs with the pre-plan information? If not, at least if the dispatch center has that information, it can be passed on to the responding firefighters. It's just a great safety valve to get everybody working together. What else can the dispatch center consider putting in their CAD? Fire department connections, I think, is important to have in there. Would it not be embarrassing to have a fire in a building with a fire department connection and you didn't realize it? Now, yes, we should know it. Maybe we should have it in our pre-plan too, but if the dispatch center has it, they can relay it to the responding fire department ahead of time before anyone even has to look up in their pre-plan where it is. Knox box locations, the same thing. The dispatch center can let the responding fire departments know where the Knox box is. Now, some people make a big deal about key holders. I mean, they are great to have. They really are. Now, I don't worry so much about having key holder information at the fire department's end. It definitely should be at the dispatch center end. So if they do share the pre-planned form, it's going to be on both. But it's really important that the dispatch center, I believe, the dispatchers are the ones updating the key holder information because their center's manned 24/7. People can call that number to update the key holder information at any time. And usually the dispatcher, it's just a couple keystrokes in the CAD and they're typing it as the person is giving them the key holder information. So to me, key holders, they're important to have. Definitely important to have on the dispatch side of things and to keep it updated. And like I said, if they share the information, great. If the fire department has it, it's no big deal. But usually it's the dispatcher making the phone call anyway. So they should definitely have the key holder information on their end. And what else? What else should they have? Well, I like to have a site plan accompanying the pre-planned form. It can be at the dispatch center so they can share it maybe with covering agencies. But the fire department should definitely have a site plan, which is a rough sketch of the building or the complex that they're responding to. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. I mean, I've seen some photocopies or scans of complicated building plans and maybe a size 8 font that you can't read on a normal, nice, bright, sunny day, let alone at night or if it's raining out or in a very excited condition where you need things to stand out quickly and they just won't because everything's so small or hard to read. So a site plan being just a nice sketch of the building. Maybe showing the entrances. I like to label or number the doors so we can identify them quickly and we're all on the same page and we can refer to them for not just access but also if we had to help crews out, we can all be on the same page as to what door number or letter we're going into. There's some really good CAD programs out there for computer drawing the buildings, and that's great. But again, time is a volunteer's most precious commodity, so we might not have time to be at a computer doing it. And I've seen some really good hand-drawn sketches too. But whatever you do, for our more complicated buildings, our commercial buildings, a nice building sketch really, really can come in handy. And with the very large complexes in our districts, like an industrial park or maybe a college campus, one neat thing I've seen is departments breaking those drawings into quadrants, into zones, where they can break it into zones and quadrants for different strategies depending on where the fire might be. And accompanying that site plan is a sheet called a note called a strategy note. So the fire department can designate, okay, if the fire's in zone 1 at this complex, here's where we're going to park our apparatus. Here's where the water supply is going to come from. Here's how we need to set up and the initial actions we need to take to get this under control. Here's an example now of where we're calling an audible. Now, the firefighters have that playbook and they know what they need to do for their fires. But this is an example of where an audible's got to be called as to where to park, where the water supply is going to come from, maybe who's going to supply the water, because it's such a large, large complex. So it's broken down by zone, by color, by quadrant, and the strategy note simply says, hey, if it's in zone 1, park here, water supply here, here's where your ladder's going to go, things like that. In one example I can think of in my own department where strategy notes really came in handy and also reinforced the need to not just compile strategy notes and pre-plan information, but to train on it and educate your members is we had a fire many years ago in a barn. We have a very suburban district. We did have a barn. It was heavy timber construction, very large barn, and it was a produce stand. And we had pre-planned it pretty well. And one thing we noted in our strategy notes was where the water supply would come from. We have hydrants in our district. The hydrants are on the opposite side of the street from where this barn was. And it was Main Street. It's actually called Main Street. Very, very busy street in our district. And because we had talked ahead of time, planned ahead of time, drilled ahead of time on this particular building, when we had the fire, when that building had the fire, our incident commander, I was assistant chief at the time, there was a chief, different chief at the time, he knew right away from experience that one of the first orders he had to give before he even got on location was to have Main Street shut down, to have our local police department shut down the main road because we'd be stretching across that road to get to the hydrants with our large diameter hose. So it just helped things go a little smoother because it didn't occur when he got there. He didn't get there and then scramble to wonder where the hydrants were or how this was going to work. We had planned and thought about it ahead of time, and we were able to get the operation started off just a little bit smoother because the road was shut down. And we knew that by pre-planning and training and drilling on it and having good strategy notes, because we also knew how to position the apparatus to get the water we needed back to this very large heavy timber constructed barn. A little different than our bread and butter type fire, so we had to call an audible here. Now, conversely, last year I was at a conference and I was actually talking to a chief who had recently come from a large fire in his area, a couple towns over actually. It was a different department's first due, but that building went up in their district, and this particular department was kind of unprepared. They didn't know where the water was going to come from. They didn't have an idea of how to maybe set up initially to get things underway, and it just made for a little bit more messed up operation. So he shared that with me, and I thought, geez, there's an example of pre-planning and strategy notes, and maybe even site plans being able to help out. But in this particular case, it wasn't done. And so two opposite ends of the spectrum there to illustrate that point. And I talked about hydrants with our barn fire, and hydrants are important to note, aren't they? Yeah, I think most dispatch centers are providing the responding units with the location of the closest hydrants. But what else can we do with that hydrant information? I think it's important to note the main size if possible. Have that in the CAD as well, or have it on the pre-planned fact sheet. What size are the mains? In my area, we have some really small 4 and 6 inch, very old water lines. It's kind of important to know that, hey, you have a large fire, you might be needing to get some additional resources to get water from elsewhere. And you can work with your local water authority to maybe get that information, or your DPW. Go through the proper channels. You know, they don't want just every firefighter calling, so maybe your chief or pre-plan officers can be the ones that are designated to talk to them. But figure it out ahead of time. You know, again, this is great information for the dispatch center, so they can provide the location of the closest hydrants. You can also note, and a lot of companies do this, the flow rate of the hydrant, so you know what kind of flow this hydrant's capable of providing you with. And some departments actually color code the cap of the hydrant because there's an NFPA standard actually on that, NFPA 291, which designates what color the cap should be depending on the flow rate the hydrant can be expected to give you. If it's below 500 gallons a minute, the cap is red. If it's 500 to 999 gallons a minute, the cap is orange. If it's 1,000 to 1,499 gallons a minute, the cap is green. And if it's above 1,500 gallons per minute, the cap is painted blue. Now, not everyone can do that. Some cities do it. So I've seen it in my own city here in Buffalo. They do it, or at least do some of those colors. I don't know if they do them all, but not a bad idea. But we should know our hydrants. We should know what they're capable of providing, and maybe what the main size is. And if they're old and small and, you know, in disrepair, are they going to blow maybe when you do have a fire? So we can kind of put that in the back of our mind. And also, do we have any private hydrants with these complexes? And do you know if they flow water? And our standard procedure in my area with private yard hydrants, they're called, is we'll use one of them. But in the back of our mind is the fact that we don't know, or we know we can't depend on them. Our municipal hydrants are tested twice a year by the local water authority. And we know that they're greased up and ready to go and can be depended on. The yard hydrants are supposed to be tested, I believe, by the building owners once a year. A lot of times they're not. So our SOP simply is we do note the yard hydrants because they can be a great help at these large complexes. We will use one, and the incident commander will also make plans to supplement that water supply if needed. Matter of fact, I was at a fire as a very young firefighter. I don't even think I was an officer at this point. We had a fire in a senior citizens complex in my district where there was a yard hydrant right in front of the complex that was burning. Serious fire, good fire condition, and the incident commander allowed the first in engine to use the yard hydrant. But because he trained and he planned ahead of time and we had a good pre-plan that had been communicated to him when he was coming up the ranks, he ordered in an additional engine, incoming engine. He ordered to drop their large diameter hose and go out to a municipal hydrant just in case we needed to supplement that water. So note the yard hydrants, know what you're going to do with them, and have them in your site plan. And maybe you don't even have hydrants. Maybe you need to plan ahead with your site plan and strategy notes where your ponds are for drafting. Maybe you got to plan ahead for water shuttle operations and where they're coming from. Maybe you have dry hydrants in your area. The point is, know ahead of time. Know ahead of time by gathering the information and putting it down on the pre-fire plan. And if possible, adding strategy notes for these larger complexes or areas in your community that you need to have good strategy notes for. Do it ahead of time. A cool thing that we're talking about doing at my area, we're actually working on it now, is loading at the dispatch center the site plan information and even the strategy notes right in the CAD. Now, a lot of times a dispatcher may not even need that, but that can now be shared with other agencies. Now think about it. Think about it. You have a great pre-plan put together. You have a site plan put together. You have strategy notes that you've drilled and trained on. But now you're at your banquet or you're at another incident and you're being covered by another company. How are they going to know about your strategy notes or about the building layout? Well, maybe the dispatch center can share that with those other responding agencies. They can share it with mutual aid departments that are covering your department. It's a great, great idea that we're working on implementing. You know, it doesn't even have to be at a fire. It could simply be where the panel is to reset an alarm and you got a covering company coming in and they don't know where it is. Either way, it greatly assists, doesn't it? It assists the covering company and it helps contribute to a much smoother, more professional operation. Everybody wins. You know, the firefighters are better prepared. The fire department, whether it's the original department whose district the call's in or a covering department, they're better prepared. And our customer, the one having the emergency, the property owner, the one we are all sworn to protect to the best of our ability, they're going to benefit from this. Now, all this information, all your pre-plan information, your site plans, your strategy notes, that's great. It really can help out at a scene as we've talked about. But dusty binders filled with pre-plans or pre-plans that are on a rig in an iPad or on a tablet, they're really no good if we have to read them for the first time when that incident strikes. It's good to have a general idea ahead of time of what's contained in those pre-plans and strategy notes so we're not fumbling through pages or trying to remember that password to get into the tablet. So when you can, review the information in the pre-plans. Review it for your veteran members. Introduce the information to your new members. And there's several good ways to do that, to get that information out to your members. One idea I've seen a department do is included. They have a monthly informational newsletter that gets emailed out to their membership and also mailed out if people don't have email. And this department put a pre-planned note or article in every monthly newsletter. Some of them were new and some of them are reviews. But just a great way, you know, obviously the onus is on the reader there, but a lot of people did read them and to refamiliarize themselves or to learn about the new building in their district. Obviously, you can take some training nights to talk about the buildings and the pre-plans for your districts. And we can get out into the buildings. I mean, we talked about getting out into the buildings to gather the information, but let's do some pre-planned walkthrough drills in the buildings as well. And there's two ways to do this, two different kinds. There's a realistic type walkthrough where you're doing a real-time drill based on the strategy notes that maybe you put together. You know, you simulate a fire in a certain section of the building and then talk about, you know, what you would do for that type of incident. And then you can also do a pre-planned walkthrough drill where you gather the information. We need to get out into those buildings to do that. And there's the first time you've ever been in the building, and then there's also periodic updates, you know. Those could come from we talked earlier about the building department, DPW, whoever it is, planning department. In our town, we have fire inspectors that go out and check the buildings, and that's their paid job, and then they can provide maybe those updates to the department and to the dispatch center. But it's still important to get our troops out there as well so they get familiar with the buildings and do some walkthroughs. Now, when you do walk through the buildings, I've seen some really bad walkthroughs where people just walk around and I refer to it as how Chevy Chase acted in that Vacation movie when he saw the Grand Canyon and he kind of just looked at it and shook his head up and down and walked away without really taking in what he was seeing. And I've seen that. I've seen that in walkthrough drills where there's no one taking charge and no one pointing out what they need to know about the building, no one discussing what the playbook would be for that building. So we want to make sure we really take advantage of the opportunity that we're out in that building. Here's a great opportunity for an officer to gain some credibility by taking some new members under their wing and explaining what to look for and explaining what the strategy notes are for that building. And everybody would win there, and it's a great opportunity as a new officer, as a young officer, or someone just trying to build their credibility to really, really showcase their interest and their knowledge and take the bull by the horns and really lead a good pre-planned walk through a building. You might have a brand new person that doesn't even know what they should be looking for. Maybe that former high school student we talked a little bit about earlier. No idea what they're looking for, but you can explain to them what's important, why you're noting the things that you are. And again, you can review your unique strategy notes for that. And hey, if there is a fire, here's where the rigs are going to park. Here's where the water supply is. And you know what? You're generating interest and creating excitement. And it's just so important to do that and not just walk through the building and really not pay attention to what you are looking at and what you would do if there was an incident in that building. Another thing you can do to make our members more familiar with the buildings in our district is I wrote an article called the What If Drill. I wrote that a couple of years ago for fire engineering. When you're at a routine call at one of these buildings, a routine alarm call or even a medical call, engage your members with the What If Drill. Just pull them aside for a couple minutes and talk about the building. And hey, I know this was only a food on the stove call or a malfunction of the alarm system, but what if there was an incident here? Where would our rigs park? Where would our rigs park? Where would we get our water from? Are there any hazards with this building? Maybe bring out the pre-plan for that building and use the opportunity, just a few minutes, to engage your members and to discuss with them what's important to know about that building. This is great at the larger buildings, your schools, your industrial buildings, apartment complexes, churches. You can do it at residential houses as well. You can certainly pull members aside and talk about, the street you're on and the house you're dealing with. And it's just a great opportunity to refresh our members' memory as to what they need to know about your strategy notes, your playbook, your SOPs, and what you've talked about with that building, such as that barn we've been to for that fire. Hey, remember the hydrants are across Main Street. We have to shut down Main Street. It's just so critically important to do this and to get out in the buildings and to be observant and to have good situational awareness as to what is occurring in our communities and to properly record the information and ensure it is passed on through the generations. As I said, the current leadership team, you might be aware of what's going on. You might have seen the building being built and you know the target hazard. But what happens when you retire? What happens when you move on? What happens when you lose that dreaded volunteer fire department election or decide simply you don't have time and can't be an officer anymore? Who is passing that information on? We need to ensure that we are passing it on. Yes, we need to gather the information. We need to record the information. We need to share the information between the building department and our dispatch center, and we need to share it among our members as well. Remind our senior members and update the newer members coming in. And to highlight just how important it is to gather this information ahead of time and to work and educate our members and ensure that this important information, this life-saving information, is passed on, let's discuss what is commonly called the Trust Roof Trilogy. The purpose here is not to criticize or second-guess anybody, but to learn from some tragedies and honor the memory of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and were killed in the line of duty. The Truss Roof Trilogy is relayed by the legendary Vincent Dunn from the FDNY. Just like I mentioned earlier, Francis Brannigan, if you do not know who Vincent Dunn is, please Google his name, because he is a man who should be known to all firefighters, all professional firefighters. Legendary 40-plus year career in the FDNY and author of countless books and videos that have helped firefighters understand fire behavior, building construction, and so many great things he has done for the fire service. Anyway, here's what Chief Dunn says about the Truss Roof Trilogy and how it impacted the fire service, and how, in my opinion, is a great example of why we need to ensure not only we have building pre-plans, but we pass on the information learned. Now, as professional firefighters, we should all be aware of and understand the dangers of truss roof construction, especially when impacted by fire. And many of you probably already know about the Hackensack Ford dealership fire, which occurred on July 1st, 1988, when 5 firefighters were killed when the bowstring truss roof collapsed. This was the poster child for truss roof awareness and the dangers of trusses. Or was it? Just a decade earlier, in August of 1978, 6 FDNY firefighters were killed at the Walbaum supermarket when the truss roof failed there. Actually, 12 fell into the inferno. 12 were on the roof and fell into the inferno, and 6 made it out alive. But 6 firefighters were killed in 1978. And just a decade before that, in October of 1967, 5 firefighters were killed in Cliffside, New Jersey, when a truss roof bowling alley fire collapsed. Now, these incidents highlight the importance of pre-fire planning for sure, but they also highlight the need to communicate the information through the generations of firefighters. And there was actually another major truss failure, and 4 firefighters were killed at a car dealership fire in Wichita, Kansas, just a year or so around the Cliffside, New Jersey fire. Matter of fact, in that Wichita, Kansas fire, the chief of the department was actually killed, and even more horrific, he had just left a party that was being at his friend's house, a party celebrating his wedding anniversary, and he went off to the fire never to return. And these truss roof failures and tragedies are spread throughout our fire service history. Even in 1941, when 13 firefighters were killed when a truss roof failed at a theater fire in Brockton, Massachusetts. Lessons learned from each of those fires. Building construction in those territories possibly being noted, but maybe not passed on to future generations of firefighters. That is why it is so important to ensure that not only we compile this information, but we train on it and pass it on for those coming next. May all those firefighters rest in peace. May we honor their memory by passing on the lessons learned, trying to make sure we capture the building hazards ahead of time. Pass it on. Folks, been talking a lot about pre-plans and the importance of setting up a good program. Maybe you have a great program in place in your fire department. Fantastic. Keep it going. Take charge. Take ownership. And ensure it continues on. If yours needs improvement, great. Start somewhere. Take baby steps. You don't have to do every building in 1 year. Maybe just adopt a simple uniform pre-planned form to start with and start gathering information on just a couple buildings. If you can, pick a couple officers or even one officer who takes ownership, whose responsibility it is to work on the program. You know, accomplishing anything requires leadership, and it's all about leadership. And maybe you have some firefighters or fire officers who are in charge of your program, but they haven't done too much. Sit them down. As the leader, sit them down, explain the importance of why they need to do it, establish some simple expectations, talk about the Truss Roof Trilogy to highlight the importance of it, and get it done. Some simple ideas, some simple random thoughts of mine on how to make your program better. Nothing fancy here, There's a lot of great programs out there. I'm sure I missed on some great things that you're doing. But these are some simple steps I think you can take to improve your program and make everyone a little better. So that building doesn't catch us off guard. You know, if you have the ABC dynamite plant in your first due, the first time you think about how to handle a fire there, might not be, shouldn't be when it's burning. Just my random thoughts on building pre-plans, and they're important. So feel free to share your thoughts on pre-plans. Tell me what your department's doing. Talk about those other random thoughts I shared earlier tonight. 3,000 civilians dying every year in home fires in America. 3 of the 5 do not have working smoke detectors. What do you think of billing for motor vehicle responses or any responses? Tell me about your fire prevention success stories and how you demonstrate professionalism and competence on those fire prevention details. Again, reach out to me at tamerrill63@aol.com. Give my Facebook page, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, a like. I would really appreciate that. I'm just over 9,000. I really want to get to 10,000 this year. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'd love to hear from y'all. And please remember that FDIC is coming up in April. Start making your reservations. Pick your classes. Again, my class, which I would love to see you at and love to meet you and talk to you, is Tuesday the 21st of April from 8 a.m. till noon. But no matter what class you take, you know you're going to come away fired up. I guarantee it. You're going to come away re-energized, fired up, and ready to roll back in your hometown department. Remember the FDIC scholarship? Your ability to nominate a deserving firefighter to get an all-expenses-paid trip to FDIC. And thanks to Honeywell and DuPont for sponsoring that scholarship. Head over to FDICscholarship.com to get more information and maybe nominate a deserving first responder for that scholarship. Thank you to MSA for sponsoring these great podcast shows. And thanks as always to Fire Engineering and the great Chief Bobby Halton, for allowing us to do what we love to do and share our message with you all. My next show is scheduled for Tuesday, December 3rd. I don't want to think about December. Yikes, December is coming. I do have a great guest lined up for that night, so I'll be checking out my professional fire department page for information on that. And folks, thank you so much for listening in to my random thoughts today. And please stay safe and always remember that developing, maintaining, and upholding a professional reputation is the duty and responsibility of all firefighters, paid or volunteer. Stay safe, folks.